I'm Carson Briski with Mid-Columbia Fisheries Enhancement Group, and today I'm going to go over challenging hydrologic conditions, riparian planting irrigation methods. It's going to be kind of hard to beat Michelle, but if you can't get roots into the water, irrigation is the best method to go next. So what are the challenging hydrologic conditions in central Washington? There are two. There's atmospheric and terrestrial. So for atmospheric, we have low annual precipitation amounts, varying snowpack, like we have this year, we have low snowpack in the mountains, and then we also have low spring rainfall. Terrestrial, we have water table fluctuations, i.e. agricultural irrigation flows, along with proximity to water surface, so planting implementations on terrace banks or upper level elevation banks. So why do we irrigate? Obvious reasons: we want to increase plant survival, promote fine root development during establishment when groundwater isn't available, and accelerate and maintain project site success. A lot of money goes into these projects, so seeing them succeed is very important. When to irrigate? At Mid-Columbia, we usually start our irrigation either mid-April to early May through October, and it is variable from site to site with different conditions. Some of our upper Kittitas County sites don't need water as early as some of our lower valley sites, so that it does vary. But to start things off, we water 4 times a month for newly establishing sites, so year 1 sites, and then 2 times a month for 2 to 3 year sites, and then usually after the 2 to 3 year sites, we remove the irrigation if plant growth is substantial and has met project site goals. And if they haven't, we'll come back or we'll leave the irrigation in and we'll water 1 time per month for more mature sites. This is typically for sites with poor atmospheric, soil, canopy cover, and site protection. So some of the three irrigation types for riparian plantings is broadcast irrigation, which covers a large surface area and everything gets watered. And I consider this to be indirect irrigation because you're not singling out one plant that's getting irrigation. Then we have hose and hand irrigation, which if calculated correctly and timed correctly, you can get 5 gallons per plant. And then this is a form of direct irrigation because you're directly performing irrigation to one single plant. And then the third and final one that we perform, that is my favorite, is drip irrigation. You can get almost exactly 5 gallons per plant, or 5 gallons of water per plant. And this is another mode of direct irrigation. So I'll go over now irrigation overviews of the 3 types. Beginning with broadcast irrigation, we found that it's best suited for agricultural irrigation or seedbed establishment. We are in the works of doing a cottonwood seedbed establishment project, and we have yet to really perform any broadcast irrigation, but it is in the plans. It's not practical for conventional riparian plantings, does not penetrate mulch and soil effectively. Fine roots receive minimal water. Top few inches of soil is saturated, but there's nothing getting into the fine root layer. Weed management is also highly increased. Like I said, everything's getting water, including your newly establishing plants, but also weeds and reed canary grass are also getting irrigated. Hose and hand irrigation is best for small plantings up to 200 plants max. Simultaneous watering is extremely inefficient. You can get a 4-prong splitter and water 4 plants at a time, but you do have the ability to control the water flow delivery with timing the delivery and deaccelerating the pump. This is mainly used in newly implemented project sites to quote-unquote water in plants if soil conditions are dry. We always want to put the roots into moist soil, so watering them is extremely efficient. It's also good for nursery establishment or care, as you can see on the picture on the right. And it is also great for volunteer events. While it is laborious, it is more monotonous than labor. And it's great for the volunteers to kind of get a sense of accomplishment and ownership in a project site, especially with the volunteers that actually come in and plant these plants, and then they water them through establishment and maturity. So it's great seeing smiles on their faces. And my final and most favorite, like I said, is drip irrigation. The water is centralized in the soil column. Soil penetration is exceptional for fine root establishment, even with mulch. Water delivery system is set up to be transportable and used at other sites, so it's very cost effective. And water delivery to each plant is near exact, but only if the system and the pump is maintained. Water filtration is absolutely necessary. As you can see, the top left, that's a 300 micron 2-inch brush filter. And then we also have a filter that is attached to the water access point. So we have a filter and a fish screen pulling from the water in through the system, and then before the water enters the drip system, it goes through that 300 micron brush filter. System pressure reducers also help manage water flow. And then so you're not popping lines or breaking lines and have a whole bunch of maintenance to follow up on. And winterization of irrigation lines is absolutely required. All of our strip systems and all other irrigation systems are temporary and they're above ground. So as soon as we get freezing temps and there's water in those lines, you're going to crack lines and have to do a lot of maintenance. This is kind of a good picture comparing flood irrigation to drip irrigation. You can see on the left photo that they have more woody root structures, and on the right there's more fine root structures. Fine root establishment is great to absorb nutrients, and there's also minimal water consumption with drip irrigation. You almost know, if you calculate correctly, you know how much water you're using. So, how much does all these irrigation types cost? There's a bit of a cost comparison here, and I'll break it down briefly for you, but this is per a 1,000 plant project. So you can see every one of them has a water pump, filter materials, irrigation materials, installation costs, labor for 2 growing seasons, and the removal of the irrigation system if it's needed, which it only pertains to drip irrigation for this example. Something to point out for the hose and quote-unquote polytank watering, hose watering and broadcast irrigation, the way we have it set up now, has the same exact, essentially, per plant cost. I made it kind of fun and added, if you didn't have water rights or didn't have a water source and you had to fill your water truck or your polytank, your 450-gallon polytank, your labor costs are exponential compared to them. To break down labor for 2 growing seasons, drip irrigation, essentially one person can efficiently manage the system. So one person, 4 times a month for 5 months, and you get your cost. And then if you have broadcast irrigation, you have to boost it up to 4 crew members, 4 times a month, and then you bring it back for 2 times a month for your second year. And the same with drip irrigation as well. But where things change, where you have a 450-gallon poly tank and labor, is that you're still also, your first initial year, you're going 4 times a month with 4 crew members and for 5 months. And then the next year, you're turning that in half and you're doing 2 times a month with 4 crew members for 5 months. But where you increase your cost is the refilling of your poly tank. In order to get 5 gallons per plant, you have to refill your poly tank roughly 11 times, which is extremely time sensitive. So some project examples that I have are Yakima River Mile 160. Why did we decide to do drip irrigation? We found that the water table depth was below 42 to 60 inches, moderately well-draining soils, and we had irregular subsite location, shapes, but we also had private water access, which was very valuable. We wanted to accelerate plant growth to slow bank erosion and outcompete invasive vegetation. And you can see that is a 2023 photo showing our drip irrigation, and the tarp has been removed and we've been moving towards mulch quite more effectively. So our results from 2022 to 2023, 2022, we watered 4 times a month. 2023, we watered 2 times a month, and we found that after 2 years, we had 71 overall site survivability. And left is 2022, right is 2023 for growth. Risks of drip irrigation. If your project site is left unfenced, you have wildlife interaction. It is easily cut with mowers or brush cutters if you're not careful. Maintenance required for proper function. Must winterize and flush your system. And you also need to eliminate your fire danger around the pump. Brush cutting around the pump is very crucial. Our second site, which kind of has both broadcast and direct hose irrigation, is Spring Creek. A little site history. This site was heavily manipulated land through agricultural and grazing. 11,300 plants were conventionally planted in 2021, and irrigation began in 2022 to deliver water to higher elevation plantings. You can see River Right is much more lower in elevation than on the left bank, where we did all of our watering. Results, you can see from 2022 versus 2023. 2022 was looking sparse. 2023, plants grew and the friendship grew as well. So there are risks of broadcast irrigation. More surface area is irrigated, resulting in all vegetation competing and receiving water. Increased cost in weed management, and is not effective, or not an efficient source of irrigation for large plantings. And it's also a high water consumption. And this is kind of a summary, is our comparison table. I won't go into it in too much depth, but you can kind of see, you can compare each 3 irrigation types that Mid-Columbia uses at the moment. I hope to have, if we ever talk about this again, I hope to have more information on broadcast irrigation. We slightly phase out of hose and hand water irrigation because drip line is so efficient, and you can do it in all soil types. Weed management is low, maintenance is moderately low, and installation is very straightforward. And I'd like to thank the Mid-Columbia Fisheries restoration crew. This is the best all-together photos I could find. Some of these people are still on the crew, some of them are not, some of them have gone to different agencies, or yeah, it's a lot of their implementation, installation work would not happen without them, so we thank them all. A lot of them are here today. And if you have any questions, Michelle and I will be up here for I don't know how long. 10 minutes? Wow. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. What were your primary limitations with the drip irrigation? Our primary limitations were water right access. That was the big thing. If the landowners had water rights, it made things a lot easier. But if they didn't, it was, we didn't even think of drip irrigation. Distance, we had a lot of criticism at first when we implemented one of our one of our drip irrigation lines, and we were able to get from one 2,000 foot main line, we were able to get ample gallons per hour, which is we do 2 to 2.5 gallons an hour, and we'll water each sub-site for 2 hours to get 5 gallons. Size of the pump is a 120 cc, like 7 horsepower Honda water pump, 2-inch pump. Yeah, yeah. It's like $550. Yeah.
What's the deepest how low can you go? Well, so I personally, the deepest I planted is 6 feet. So I have not combined different techniques yet, but Wildlands I know has. And I don't know Wayne.
So I'm not an ecologist, I'm an archaeologist. So I have some technical questions on the singer.
Okay.
Two things. One, how wide is that opening at the base?
The opening at the base, I mean, it opens around 8 inches, so it's not super large.
And in the video, it's rocking quite a bit. Can you speak maybe to the horizontal disturbance that's happening and maybe some?
Yeah. So when the singer rocks back and forth, it depends. It does depend on the substrate that we're planting in. The rockier and more compact the soil is, the harder we do have to work that singer back and forth. But typically, the hole left behind, in an ideal situation, the hole left behind is about as big as the singer is itself, which not like that. In a situation where we do have to rock back and forth, it can be 2, 3 feet roughly.
We reuse it. Yep, you're able to reuse most everything except the half-inch line that we have poked in with the quarter-inch line that goes to the emitter. So all the main line, all the cross-section lines, and all the quarter-inch lines to the emitter are saved. But the half-inch line that has the hole poked in it, we don't use that. Yeah, recycle. Yeah. We only use one. And to mention the flag emitter too, those are the most efficient emitter we've found because you can take off the end of them. And then if there is any debris in your lines, it'll discharge it. But we haven't tried multiple emitters. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do use the PVC plants that I discussed. Those are deep rooted plant stock that we grow for. So we do use rooted plant stock. On the projects that I've been on, it's primarily rooted plant stock. You can use we've used tall one tree pots before that are 4 inches by 14 inches. Those will feed through the singer okay. And then if we do have like a short 1 gallon rooted plant, we usually create a pilot hole with the singer and then put the plant into the hole after that. You have to break up the roots quite a bit on those though, just because the hole is smaller than the 1 gallon pot. Sorry, I feel like there was a second question.
Yeah, just for the really
Yes. Yeah. Right. So typically we like to leave about a foot of plant material above the ground just for photosynthesis. So realistically, if you're planting 6 feet ground, you're going to want a 7-foot plant. So you have, or larger, but so that you do have about a foot above the soil. Like cuttings? Yeah, oh yeah, we install cuttings. So the Rippy Island, the video that I showed you, it was part of a larger research project, and we had different plots where this whole section of plants was rooted stock, and then the next section was all cuttings. So we can definitely install. We typically use 7-foot cuttings with the singer. So the most I have ever personally planted is 2 in a hole. We could obviously plant more. The opening of the singer is wide enough to accommodate those, our PVC tubes are 3 inches, and then the 4 by 14-inch tree pots, those go through the stinger as well, so we could put multiple cuttings in. So I haven't followed up on that project. It was, so you could look it up. It's Ripley Island, and it was done by Honorable Power Administration. I have not. Water jet planters? Mm-mm. Right, right. No. Yeah, so our, our potting soil is compost. We do use perlite. We use a biosol fertilizer, and then Maybelline. That's, yeah, absolutely. And that's all I probably need. So there was moist soil in the road decommissioning, but the road decommissioning was upland planting. So we weren't trying to necessarily use groundwater to support vegetation. So that did not necessarily have visible groundwater, like actual water, but the soil was moist where we